Television's Daredevil, only on Disney Plus.
Hey guys, GothamGeekGirl here, and it's time for another review. So freaking excited to talk about Daredevil Born Again. I had the pleasure of watching the entire series, and let me say, it was badass. I will keep this review completely spoiler-free to give viewers a chance to enjoy the rest of the season. Daredevil Born Again will be releasing weekly on Disney Plus starting March 4th, 2025. I loved it. I had a blast. I'm a huge fan of the original series, so I was so nervous. But Marvel Television, after almost a decade, brings fans back to the streets of Hell's Kitchen with the highly anticipated follow-up, the acclaimed Netflix series Daredevil Netflix, that set the bar so extremely high for comic book television. It was groundbreaking. As a huge lifelong fan of the Marvel character, my favorite Marvel character, and what I consider to be the best Marvel comic adaptation ever on Netflix, it was a game changer. And Disney Plus had some major shoes to fill, and they successfully did it. The series is badass. It's gritty. First, let me say that the man without fear is back. Daredevil's back, Kingpin is back, and he returns in the gripping, bare knuckle, and savage follow-up, The Beloved Devil of Hell's Kitchen. Daredevil Born Again understood the assignment, giving viewers what they wanted, a worthy continuation of the Daredevil Netflix series.
You hate yourself. He's eating you up because you ain't.
Born Again it's emotional, it's tragic, it's brutal, it's straight up gritty. It's bringing the gritty and the blood back. It's violent. After almost 7 years since Daredevil's final season aired in 2018, and it's nearly a full decade between the first season of Born Again and the first season of the original series. So we see Charlie Cox return as Murdock with brief cameos in movies such as Spider-Man No Way Home. He was also in shows such as She-Hulk, Attorney at Law, and Hawkeye. So he previously made those appearances, and now he's back as our favorite blind lawyer vigilante. And like I said, Kingpin is back, the brutal, bloody Kingpin that we loved from Daredevil. Born Again keeps the tone and the street level of grittiness that worked phenomenally with the game changer of Netflix. I keep going back to Netflix because I think it was one of the best series created. And finally, Daredevil Born Again is one of the better series that we've seen from Disney Plus lately, and it lives up to its predecessor. So it continues to develop with some returning characters while also introducing viewers to entirely new characters. People will argue that the characters' Disney appearances have been very different from the way they appeared in the Netflix series, and I completely agree with that. I think that while D'Onofrio returned as Wilson Fisk, one of the best on-screen live-action villains we've ever seen, period, he was not handled the same way on Hawkeye at all. And I will argue that to the death of me. But now he's back. And for 3 seasons on Netflix, Daredevil, which offered rich drama and storytelling and fully fleshed out deep character narratives with shocking violence, as the vigilantes and the villains clashed beyond self-destructive extremes. We see this continue in the series, but let's give credit where it's due. We can thank television series creator Drew Goddard for the original MCU Netflix series and the amazing team of showrunners for what they created, and sharing continuity with the franchise's films produced by Marvel Television in association with ABC Studios. Stephen S. DeKnight, who served as a showrunner for the first season, with Doug Petrie and Marco Ramirez taking over as co-showrunners the second, and Eric Olison, who joined the series as the showrunner for the third. Goddard also served as a consultant for the series. And we also, of course, have to thank Jeff Lowe, executive producer and head of Marvel at the time, for the amazing world that they created. So Born Again, it went through numerous reshoots and changes involving episode counts and major rewrites and a complete creative overhaul. At least Born Again, this time they gave us a proper runtime and an episode count and not the bullshit mediocre 6 episodes. They finally took the hint and gave us proper television, proper writing. Well, fans can rejoice that Born Again, created by showrunner Dario Scardapane and executive producers Kevin Feige, Louis Esposito, Brad Winderbaum, Sana Anamat, Chris Garrett, Christopher Ord, Matthew Corman, Justin Benson, and Aaron Moorhead. The series brings back a bunch of familiar faces from the original Daredevil series, making stronger connections to the Netflix series, which included bringing back Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio, co-stars Deborah and Woll and Elden Henson as best friends Karen Page and Foggy Nelson, who we loved, as well as Wilson Bethel as the killer Dex Poindexter, aka Bullseye. In Daredevil Born Again, we see Matt Murdock, Charlie Cox, return as a blonde lawyer with heightened abilities who is fighting for justice through his bustling law firm, while former mob boss Wilson Fisk, Vincent D'Onofrio, who also returns, pursues his own political endeavors in New York. When their past identities begin to emerge, both men will find themselves on an inevitable collision course. That's how the synopsis goes for this season. And last we saw Nelson, Murdock, and Paige reuniting and opening a firm together. Born Again off right in the action with very devastating events. And I won't reveal any major context or spoilers to let viewers watch for themselves. As seen in the trailers, though, we do see Bullseye return, including some other fan favorites from Netflix. While it's not a direct continuation, Born Again does use some of the major plot points from the Netflix series, including an explosive sequence with Bullseye. So there are some series that you should definitely watch beforehand. I highly suggest watching the Netflix series, at least Daredevil, the main 3 seasons, also Echo and Hawkeye, for some moments that tie into this new series. I feel like there are some key components that tie into this. While it does pull, in terms of narrative plot points, what the Disney Plus series adds in addition to the already exciting, explosive, violent series, there's a lot more legal courtroom action this time around. We see more clients. We see more elements that were not as focal in the Netflix series, such as a lot more of the legal side, especially as Matt, he takes a break from donning the mask. And now we see him really being more Matt Murdock and really being a lawyer. And it's been a year since the disappearance of Daredevil, and Matt now has a new legal partner, District Attorney Kristen McDuffie, played by Nikki and James. As Murdock and Kristen are known as the two best lawyers, Matt is now living a much more lavish lifestyle this time. He has a fancy luxury apartment. He's decked out in all these, well, very different suits. And I like their dynamic together. They seem to really balance well and depict the side that we haven't really seen before. By the end of the first season, Matt has found his calling. Instead of running from the devil inside of him, he embraces it and uses it to help others. He had his red costume designed by former criminal Melvin Potter, Matt Gerald, and Matt patrols Hell's Kitchen as Daredevil. So now we see him return. As I mentioned, it's a year later, and Matt is now faced with the dilemma of picking up the mask again after a line is crossed and dealing with his internal struggles. We see some beautiful imagery, such as a close-up of the falling mask, which it really like tones into that. And he says in the trailer, raised to believe in grace, also raised to believe in retribution. This is a major theme that we see throughout the whole series as he continues to wrestle with his darker instincts and his current belief in justice being handled by the proper authorities. As I said, Matt is taking a break from donning the mask, and he believes that the police can handle it. The imagery, sounds, and overall tone feel very familiar. Also, Matt's beliefs beyond the mask and what it represents are heavily explored in this series. It opens with jokes about a soul cycle taking over and Hell's Kitchen nostalgia, and that's a feeling all too familiar for us native New Yorkers of an ever-changing New York City with all of our favorite beloved places closing down for fancy glass storefronts. But we similarly saw some themes of gentrification with Miss Cardenas in the first season and Dirty Landlords, and this time we see similar topics explored, such as classism, underprivileged, police brutality, politics, and the exploitation of power. Also representative of the series being more of a continuation than a complete reset, it's seen with the Daredevil Born Again opening credits, demonstrating the balance between honoring the past and moving forward in this new direction. Man, when I tell you this gave me goosebumps, this gave me goosebumps. The original opening title sequence, it's iconic, and it was a big part of the setting that, you know, the tone in the opening credits is the striking red title sequence that sees Hell's Kitchen, New York, and covered in red and what appears to be blood. The sequence was produced by filmmaking collective Elastic and directed by Patrick Clare, who was the creative head of Antibody. So Elastic, over the years, they've created some of TV's most memorable opening credits, from Game of Thrones to True Detective, and Daredevil definitely stood out as one of the best opening credit scenes. So they wanted to stay true to that. And this new intro features a statue of Daredevil that falls apart and rebuilds itself. So this change definitely gives a new fresh look, but it also keeps the familiar music that we already know. So it was an interesting choice to stay very close to the classic theme. Many shows you figure would go for a completely new song, but Born Again stick to what worked before. And as I mentioned, this gave me goosebumps. The updated animation, though, it brings a little something different. As I mentioned, we see Daredevil statue break down and come back together, which is kind of like a powerful way to represent his journey. And as I said, the music has subtle changes, but Born Again will still use composer John Pisano's theme from the Netflix series that, oh my God, it was incredible. And the decision to reuse the Daredevil theme, it's going to surprise fans because, it was also briefly used for Daredevil appearances in She-Hulk and Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. So it was great to hear these sounds again. It really feels like they wanted to stay true to the core elements of what made the original series so special. So once again, the score composer, the Newton brothers, even shared an Instagram video which featured a remixed version of Pisano's theme, hinting at the intentions to use the much-loved tune. The main antagonist, of course, is the overbearing, ruthless, calculated, and dangerously powerful Wilson Fisk. So excited to see D'Onofrio back. So this time, he's in a race as the mayoral candidate, and his plans for a structural overhaul. And Fisk doesn't care for rules. He doesn't care about processes or red tape. As I mentioned, we see a much more cynical Matt as lines were crossed, and he's struggling with coming to terms with his violent nature. Also, not forgetting that Fisk knows who Murdock is. He knows that Murdock is Daredevil. This was already touched upon in the original series. So in episode 2 of Born Again, a new hero vigilante is introduced, Hector Ayala, aka White Tiger. He's an Army veteran and New York City-based street-level hero. He's Puerto Rican, and he's played by, rest in peace, Comar de los Reyes, who sadly passed away of cancer in real life during production. So it was really sad to see that, because I would have liked to see much more of him and his character. But the character seen donning his iconic costume, and he's in possession of a mystical amulet, which is crucial to the character of White Tiger, who protects the streets because people need a hero. With Daredevil gone, who's going to take over? So the character is the first to use the name White Tiger, and this was created by Bill Mandlo and George Perez. A Puerto Rican, White Tiger was the first Latin American main character in the history of Marvel Comics. In the history of American comics. And as I mentioned, Marvel's first Hispanic superhero. He's the first member of his family to hold the mantle. Hector is also the uncle of Angela del Toro. So I won't get too much into his character. I don't want to really give away any context, but Fisk is taking advantage of the chaos that's residing in Hell's Kitchen. And, clearly he has a rift with vigilantes. And he says with the presence of vigilantes and lawlessness that the kitchen is no longer safe. There must be consequences. And he claims to fix the system, fix the city. And he feeds off fear-mongering as he declared candidacy for mayor of New York with the slogan, Fisk can fix it, in his campaign to clean the kitchen of violence and vigilante cancers. He has some weird loyalist followers, similar to the weird world we're living. But in the diner conversation we saw in the trailer, Fisk referenced Echo, that he tried to mentor someone once before. He's trying to convince Matt that he has changed. He says tragedy can transform a man. Fisk claims his time away changed him, and he claims to be a new man. He wants to make New York a better future. Matt says he was raised to believe in retribution, and we know better. We know Fisk has a facade. Underneath, he's a monster. The weight of the city literally lies on Matt's shoulders, and we see some gorgeous imagery of the city. Awesome imagery like Fisk overbearingly standing atop the city and just like watching down on people as like he shoots to power. I do have some minor flaws with the way the series is over-reliant on CGI in the opening credits. As I mentioned, the scene with Daredevil, it's really poorly CGI, especially the rooftop scenes between Daredevil and Bullseye. And Daredevil's kind of like weirdly web-slinging. Netflix was a bit more grounded and had better hand-to-hand combat and more memorable fights. But I will say Born Again is amazing. The only issue is really the CGI of Matt web slinging, that it doesn't look good, but they're very brief moments. And most of the fights are rather grounded and really well choreographed. You're going to see a lot of ass kicking. And Born Again really does handle the multiple villain storylines and different character narratives at once very well. Sometimes, we'll see an issue like Spider-Man 3, which I don't think is terrible, but where they try to have too many villains in, I think they had a good balance. Fisk, who remained a threat throughout seasons 2 and 3, thanks to his knowledge of Matt Murdock's double life. In season 2, Fisk managed to manipulate the troubled veteran Frank Castle into doing his dirty work. And in season 3, Fisk gained access to Agent Dex Poindexter, teaching him to use his perfect aim to assassinate his best friend. Well, now they are back. As revealed in the trailer, we see fan favorites Frank Castle and Bullseye come back.
Not a damn thing about it. I don't think you came here for my help.
So excited, so excited. Arty Froushan, who plays Buck Cashman, he kind of serves as the new right-hand man, aka the new Wesley. He's quiet, reserved, and he's as I mentioned, he's kind of like the new Wesley. Wesley was played by Toby Lennon Moore, who we loved in the series, who got killed off. But Buck works alongside Fisk and the new Marion campaign team to help Fisk, keep his multiple roles on track. As Fisk now has the keys to the city, his own kill squad, and his abuse of power accumulates, he has even more power and resources than ever, and he has a Safer Streets initiative. As Matt fights his inner battle, turmoil of wrath between dark and light, Fisk feeds off the fear of the city and, claims to be protecting the city from mass vigilantes and the new mysterious killer, Muse, who's on the run. This character makes his live-action debut in Born Again. This was also revealed in the trailer. I'm not going to give away plot points, but Daredevil producers did emphasize that the MCU's new villain Muse is integral in Murdock and Fisk's story. So Muse is a supervillain who appeared in Marvel Comics, created by writer-editor Charles Soule and artist Ron Garney. The character first appeared in Daredevil Volume 5, number 11. This is back in 2016. So Muse is like a serial killer artist who plans like shocking mass murders, abductions, and torture as a means of creating his art. So he's one of the villains alongside Bullseye and Fisk. And Muse is eerily chilling. He has a pretty comic accurate suit, and I think he makes for a really formidable antagonist. It was cool to see the introduction of new Marvel characters as well, and showing so much love to the comics. Another character is BB, BB Reports, own BB Urich, who's a newcomer played by Genneya Walton. This is Urich's niece, the amazing reporter Lundy Curtis Hall as Ben Urich. BB adds a new, fresh perspective to news reporting with her street-level reporting and it's a more like social media context, asking locals about the current events, and she also gains access to Fisk mayoral associates. So the series definitely feels updated in terms of like the current media landscape. People don't necessarily, sadly, read newspapers anymore, and they kind of seem like they were saying on top. It's like, the way she covers current political events and it's captured on social media, such as its emphasis on like dirty cops and the corrupt system. So Fisk's emphasis on New York tough and getting things done, like fixing the streets, is gaining popularity amongst New Yorkers, also creating divide amongst those more familiar of his criminal past, including the commissioner, who will not budge for Fisk's immoral ways of getting things done and lack of care for optics, referring to him as a thug and a kingpin. So the commissioner has made an enemy. Fisk continues his referring to mass vigilantes as cancerous criminals, and he personally calls out, of course, the skull on the chest, Spider-Man, and the devil horns. Fisk and Vanessa pick up with their marriage trouble since his disappearance after being shot, as I mentioned, watching other series, and Vanessa has taken over the business in his absence. So this is why I kind of mentioned like watching Echo and watching Hawkeye and of course Daredevil, because some of these things are key components to Fisk and Murdock's story. So John Bernthal is back, baby. He was revealed in the trailer. And this time he's messy. He has longer hair. He's an alcoholic. He's been hiding out. And he's trying to bring out the devil in Matt. Frank tells Matt he's a candy-ass hero. And you want my permission to unleash.
I don't think you came here for my help. I think you want my permission, right?
He's trying to bring the devil back out. Frank and Matt are continuing to argue over their divisive views, with Frank's belief that Matt goes too easy. He's too soft on criminals. And Matt struggles with guilt and shame, and Frank says, do what I do. He remembers like what his son told him, get him, daddy. And his loss keeps eating at you and eating at you. And Matt leaves things to the justice system now. He believes that the court can handle it and that the streets will handle it. But some of the best emotional moments are amongst these two rationalizing their belief system. Sometimes you're like, damn, Frank is right. And then sometimes you're like, damn, Matt is right.
We're just gonna keep eating and eating.
The series truly stays true to the character's core. It gave us an iconic series that will be regarded amongst Marvel's best. There's loads of bare knuckle fights. Brutal. Of course, with Frank back, there's gun toting and lots of shooting, bloody violent fight sequences. As I mentioned, my only major gripe is really the CGI. It's really a minor complaint in the overall context of how good everything else looked and worked. I really love the series, and I cannot wait to see what else they continue to explore in the city without fear. Have you started the series yet? Let me know in the comments what you think so far.
Marvel Television's Daredevil.